A highly decorated U.S. Army general, black, female, fearless, was handcuffed on the side of the road like a criminal? Not because she broke the law, but because two racist cops refused to see the truth. What happened next? One phone call, and their career ends. She wasn't armed, she wasn't aggressive, she wasn't doing anything wrong. Her only crime? Being black in the wrong neighborhood. Let me take you to a small town just outside of Richmond, Virginia. It was a calm afternoon. General Angela Morris, one of the few black women in U.S. military history to ever reach the rank of Major General, had just landed at the airport. She had come to speak at a leadership conference near a military base where she had once served. She wasn't in uniform. No ribbons, no medals, just a professional blouse, dress pants, and quiet dignity. She picked up a rental car, entered the GPS directions, and began her drive. About 20 minutes later, red and blue flashing lights appeared in her rearview mirror. She hadn't been speeding. She hadn't made a wrong turn. Still, she pulled over without hesitation. After all, she believed in law and order. She had enforced it on foreign soil. She had trained thousands of soldiers to respect the chain of command, including civilian law enforcement. But that day, she would learn that not every officer respects the uniform if they don't recognize who's wearing it. Two local officers approached her vehicle. Their posture was aggressive from the start. One placed his hand near his weapon before he even spoke. "License and registration," the first one demanded. General Morris responded calmly, professionally. "This is a rental. I have the agreement here in the glove box. May I reach for it?" The officer didn't answer. He just stared. When she moved slowly toward the glove box, the second officer raised his voice. "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle." "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, confused but still composed. That question was enough to make things worse. The first cop stepped forward, opened the door, and yanked her out. No questions, no explanations, just handcuffs. On the side of the road, in broad daylight with cars driving by, General Angela Morris, combat veteran, national security advisor, and American hero, was placed under arrest. She could feel the cold steel on her wrists. She could feel her heart pounding, not from fear, but from disbelief. They never asked who she was. They never looked at the military ID that sat just inches from her hand in her purse. They never saw anything beyond her skin. But General Morris didn't yell. She didn't beg. She didn't argue. Instead, she asked one simple question. "May I make a phone call?" The officer chuckled. "Yeah, sure. You can call your lawyer or your mama." She looked him dead in the eyes and said, "I'm calling the Pentagon." In that moment, everything changed. The smirk disappeared from the officer's face. The second one stiffened. "You're what?" "I said I'm calling the Pentagon, and I suggest you remove these handcuffs now." They didn't believe her. Not until she gave them a name and number to dial, a number that didn't ring to a lawyer or a family member, but directly to a senior official inside the Department of Defense. Within minutes, the tone flipped. The cuffs came off. Apologies were mumbled. But the damage was done. Because what these officers didn't know was that Angela Morris was not just someone. She was the someone. And the very system they swore to serve, she had power in it. And she was about to use it. Two local police officers approached the vehicle. Their steps were fast, their eyes already scanning for trouble that didn't exist. Before either one spoke, their hands hovered inches from there. Weapons, ready for war even though the woman inside was calm, composed, and still. "License and registration," one of them barked, standing stiff like he expected a fight. General Angela Morris didn't flinch. She wasn't just a soldier, she was a leader trained to handle international conflict zones with grace under fire. She'd faced foreign threats and survived war zones. But this was home. And still, it felt like enemy territory. She responded with clarity and calm. "Officer, I just landed in town. This is a rental vehicle. The paperwork and my military credentials are in the glove compartment. May I reach for them?" There was no threat in her tone. No sudden movement. She was careful, painfully careful, not to make the wrong impression, but her words were met with silence, just two blank stares, and a thick wall of suspicion. She moved slowly, one hand at a time, to open the glove box. But before she could even touch the handle, the second officer raised his voice. "Step out of the vehicle." "Now." Angela blinked. "Excuse me? What's going on?" That was enough to set them off. "Don't question us," the first officer snapped. "You're acting suspicious." "Suspicious?" she repeated, confused. "I'm cooperating. I haven't done anything wrong." But it didn't matter. To them, she wasn't a major general. She wasn't a military strategist. She wasn't a woman who had served 28 years in defense of the very country these officers claimed to protect. To them, in that moment, she was just a black woman in a rental car. They yanked her door open. "Out of the vehicle now!" Angela stepped out slowly, her hands visible, her breathing steady. Even then, she thought maybe they'd listen. Maybe there was still room for logic. There wasn't. One officer spun her around without warning and slapped cold handcuffs on her wrists. Just like that, she was under arrest. There was no explanation. No rights read. No opportunity to identify herself. Angela Morris, decorated officer, national security advisor, mentor to hundreds of young officers, was now standing on the side of a dusty road in handcuffs, in full view of passing cars, her dignity stripped without cause. Drivers slowed down. Some stared, some didn't care. To them, maybe she looked like just another suspect, just another arrest. But she wasn't. Inside, she was boiling, not with rage, but with controlled fury. The kind of fury that comes from generations of people told to stay quiet, to stay calm, to survive first, speak later. And so she stayed calm. But the storm inside her, it was already building. She thought of every young soldier she had trained, to trust the system, every speech she'd given about justice, protocol, and honor. She thought of the flag she saluted every morning, and how right now, it did nothing to protect her from two men with badges who saw only the color of her skin. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't beg. Instead, she waited. Then she looked one of the officers dead in the eye and asked, "May I make a phone call?" He scoffed. "Yeah? Who you calling? Your lawyer?" Angela didn't blink. "No," she said. "I'm calling the Pentagon." The silence that followed was louder than the sirens in the distance. Sitting on the curb, her hands bound tightly behind her back, General Angela Morris looked up at the two officers towering over her like she was nothing. She could feel the gritty pavement beneath her. The weight of the handcuffs bit into her wrists. Her legs were starting to go numb, but her mind, sharp as ever. She had survived war zones more dangerous than this. She had negotiated with hostile foreign leaders. She had made life-or-death calls from command centers at 3 a.m. So two untrained, biased cops, they didn't scare her. They only disappointed her. Calmly, firmly, she said 5 words that didn't just ask. They commanded attention. "I need to make a call." The officer standing closest scoffed. "Oh yeah? Who you gonna call, your mama?" The second one chuckled, arms folded across his chest. They were enjoying this. Two small-town enforcers who thought they had power, who thought they had caught someone without connections, without status. Angela stared at them, unblinking. Her voice didn't rise. She didn't plead. She repeated herself, this time more directly. "I'm calling the Pentagon." That's when it happened. The smirks faded, their postures shifted. The air between them suddenly felt heavier. "What? What do you mean, the Pentagon?" one asked, now unsure. Angela didn't break eye contact. "I mean, I'm a major general in the United States Army, and you've just unlawfully detained me. You didn't ask for my identification. You ignored my credentials, and now you're about to face the consequences of that decision." Silence. They looked at each other, wide-eyed. In seconds, their false confidence drained. Click. The handcuffs came off, but it was too late. Angela stood up slowly, brushed the dirt from her pants, and said nothing more. The damage was done, not to her reputation, but to theirs. Because now the situation was out of their hands. She didn't yell, she didn't threaten, she didn't even need to. She pulled out her phone, stepped a few feet away from them, and dialed a number she knew by heart. A secure line, direct to a senior liaison inside the Department of Defense. "General Morris here," she said clearly. "I've just been detained without cause by 2 local officers. I'm sending you their badge numbers now." There was a pause, the voice on the other, and dead serious. Understood, General. Are you safe? Yes, she replied. For now. And just like that, the game changed. She gave names, badge numbers, location. Within minutes, calls were being made. Real calls. From Washington, D.C. to the local police chief's office. From senior military brass to state officials. Angela didn't make the call out of anger. She made it because this was the kind of injustice that could not go unchecked. She wasn't just standing up for herself, she was standing up for every black woman who'd ever been silenced, dismissed, or targeted for simply existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. This moment wasn't just personal. It was historic, because Angela knew this wasn't about getting revenge. It was about sending a message. That rank and title meant nothing to some people, but justice would speak louder. And now, the system she served for 28 years was about to answer back. By the next morning, the police department's phone lines were flooded. Calls from Washington, calls from news stations, calls from citizens, black, white, military, civilian, all asking the same thing. How could this happen? By noon, the story had hit every major outlet. Local news anchors scrambled for answers. National networks broke the story in prime time. The headline spread like wildfire. Decorated Black Army general wrongfully handcuffed by local police. And beneath it, one call to the Pentagon changed everything. The Pentagon wasted no time. Within hours, they released a public statement backing Major General Angela Morris with full force. General Morris's record is unimpeachable. Her service to this nation spans nearly 3 decades. She is a respected leader, decorated war veteran, and one of the highest-ranking black female officers in U.S. Army history. The Department of Defense stands firmly behind her. Social media exploded. Thousands of military veterans, service members, and everyday Americans voiced outrage. Many said what others were thinking. If this can happen to her, it can happen to any of us. Angela's face, strong, composed, and unapologetically black, was everywhere, not as a victim, but as a symbol of dignity, of power, of the truth many try to ignore, because the truth was, none of her achievements mattered when 2 small-town officers saw only her skin color and assumed the worst. They didn't see her rank. They didn't see her years of sacrifice. They didn't care about her medals or honors. To them, she was just another threat. But now the world was watching. The police department announced that both officers were placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. But the damage was irreversible. Witnesses came forward. Body cam footage was reviewed. Public pressure kept building. Within weeks, both officers were officially fired for misconduct and racial profiling. But General Morris wasn't interested in headlines or revenge. She was interested in change. Real change. She didn't take a victory lap. She didn't disappear into the comfort of retirement. Instead, she stepped into a new kind of battlefield, the system itself. She began meeting with state lawmakers and local police chiefs. She sat down with civil rights attorneys, city leaders, and military ethics boards. She told them plainly, "What happened to me is part of a pattern, but patterns can be broken if we stop excusing them." She pushed for mandatory racial bias and de-escalation training in every local department across the state. She proposed civilian review boards for small-town law enforcement agencies, so communities could hold officers accountable when no one else would. She helped draft a pilot program to bring military-style ethics training to rural police forces, emphasizing accountability, discipline, and respect for civilians. And she didn't stop there. Angela Morris became a powerful voice at national conferences. She spoke not as a victim of racism, but as a survivor with solutions. "Justice isn't about punishment," she said in one televised speech. "It's about prevention, about education, about building a system where dignity is automatic, and where power doesn't give anyone permission to dehumanize others." People listened, legislators acted, policies began to change. And it all started with one humiliating, heartbreaking moment on the side of a quiet road. Angela Morris had worn the uniform of the United States Army to protect her country. Now, she wore her experience as armor to protect those who would never be seen, unless someone like her stood in the light and refused to move. She didn't just win, she made it impossible to ignore the truth. And in doing so, she turned injustice into impact. One voice, one call, and one bold stand at a time. Angela Morris stood in front of a microphone days later. No tears, no anger, no dramatics, just purpose. The room was packed. Journalists, officials, supporters, and skeptics. Cameras flashed, microphones pointed in her direction. Every eye was fixed on her, waiting to see if she'd explode, if she'd crumble, if she'd deliver a fiery attack. She didn't. She stood tall in her uniform, chest decorated with medals earned over decades of selfless service. Her presence radiated command, but it was her words that shook the room. "They didn't see a general," she began, her voice steady. "They didn't even see a woman. They saw a problem. But now, they're going to see change." The silence in the room was heavy, respectful. No one dared interrupt. Angela didn't raise her voice. She didn't shame names. She didn't seek sympathy. What she offered instead was truth, clear, unshakable, and long overdue. Her story went viral, not because she was a celebrity, not because she chased media attention, but because, in her, millions saw someone they knew. A mother, a teacher, a student, a neighbor, a woman who had done everything right and still got treated like she didn't belong. She could have been anyone. That's what made it so powerful. Angela just happened to have rank. She had power. She had a voice trained not just for war, but for justice. And she used it, not to seek revenge, not to go viral, but to shine a spotlight on a truth many are too afraid to confront. That truth? That sometimes, uniform or not, black skin makes you a suspect before you're ever seen as a person. Angela understood that her experience wasn't rare. What made it different was that this time, the wrong person got profiled. The wrong person got handcuffed because this time, the woman they tried to humiliate had an audience, she had a following, and she knew how to use it. "This isn't just about me," she said in a later interview. "This is about the thousands of voices who never got to make that phone call, the ones who didn't get a headline, the ones whose justice is still waiting." Angela turned her platform into a mission. She met with leaders across the country. She helped write legislation. She trained local departments in de-escalation techniques rooted in military discipline and human dignity. She didn't want apologies. She wanted accountability. She wanted action. She wanted to make sure that one day, a young black girl in uniform wouldn't have to prove she belonged, just to be treated with respect. Angela Morris didn't set out to become a symbol. But that day on the side of the road, when they saw only a problem, they unknowingly created a movement led by a woman who knew how to stand still under pressure, speak clearly through fear, and never ever let injustice win. If this story moved you, if it made you think, made you feel, or made you angry, don't just scroll past. Hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment. Your voice matters more than you know.